you'll see a lot of value. Like I mentioned, I was starting this program. I've done this with other circles and investments groups and so forth. And I assure you what I'm taking you through is really transforming people's lives. We started off by talking about the scripture in the book of Hosea 4, chapter 6, where the scripture tells us that my people perish for lack of knowledge. Now, that is the most powerful verse I have ever come across from the moment I got to understand how psychology of the mind works. So when I started this program, I mentioned that it is very important for us to actually pick the word knowledge in reference to what the scripture is telling us and digest something that is totally hidden from us. And that was knowledge is broken down into two parts. So there's what we call the right or the correct knowledge, and there's that which we call the incorrect knowledge. So you have the correct knowledge and you have the incorrect knowledge. Both of them are knowledge. So in the scripture is telling us that we humans perish for lack of knowledge. It is upon you and I to interpret which of these two knowledge is the scripture talking about. Is it the correct knowledge or is it the incorrect knowledge? And obviously, the answer to that question is that the scripture is always alluding to we perish because we lack the correct knowledge. And I can tell you for a fact that this is true. Those who've been with us with consistency, when I took you through the psychology of the mind, and I talked about the subconscious mind, where I said from a very young age, you start programming your mind based on your environment. You start programming the things that you hear around you, the schools that you go to. So as a child, you're very vulnerable because you have no way of differentiating the knowledge that is being fed to you, whether it's the right one or the wrong one. And that is why I find, if I ask you which religion you come from, almost 99% you'll tell me you are from the same one as your parents. You are born into that, and so they kept teaching you about the religion they believed in, and you got into that. So that's why the scripture actually tells us not to judge, because one society's way of thinking is different from another, yet all of them have knowledge, all right? So in the context of money, so far we have reached, you can actually start to see everything I was telling you is the truth from our education system that was structured to design this path that we believe will end up with financial freedom. And I've told you that is not the truth. And we say that if we really want to go ahead and actually validate my point, we just need to look up country and pick those who had very prime jobs during their working days and ask yourself how many of them are faring on well financially. So in my research, I've realized most of them are struggling. They are relying on pensions and upkeep from the children. So when I reverse back and I try to look at the data, I realize the same cycle. So they told us to go to work, go to nursery, go to primary, go to high school, go to university, colleges, get a job, start saving for your retirement, then enjoy your retirement. The truth of the matter is those who follow that cycle and end up retiring are not enjoying financially. So we have to sit back and ask ourselves, do we want to end up the same place? Is this the cycle we want to go with? And that's why we introduced the definition of insanity based on the scientist called Robert Einstein. He said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So we have been doing the same thing over and over and over, and somehow we expect magic is going to change outside there. That is not the case. So it is upon you and I to realize how we were lied to and make a stand that we are not going to accept that going forward. And that's why my focus so mainly is normally on the children. So for the parents who have an open mind, I'm also open. For institutions that have an open mind, I'm also open to them. But I personally made a decision that I was gonna change, not just Kenya, but Africa. And my target is normally the young people, because I realize that's where the mess starts from. So a recap of what we did last time. And before I start on this recap, please allow me to extend my sincere apology. Last week, I got caught up somewhere. I was not able to conduct this class as was supposed to be. So I requested Madam CEO to schedule it for today. So we're going to have this class today. And then next week, we're also going to have the 8th one. So this one, I'm just covering up what I missed last week. Poleni sana kwa hiyo. So the recap of last time, again, I'll keep pushing this, that you are a creator. And the way you create is through your thoughts. The thoughts that you allow in your mind results to your current life. If you're not happy with the things you see around you, the only solution is to change your thoughts in the way that you want to. And it brings me to those two important questions I asked you. Most important questions that you can ask yourself at any given time. The first one is, who am I? Who am I relative to this situation that I'm facing? Hii jambo linaendelea kwangu ambalo silipendi, mimi ni nani kwa hili jambo? And when you ask that question, you're looking at the past, because you are realizing you as a creator through your thoughts, whether you know them or you do not know them, whether they're conscious or subconscious, the result of what you're not happy around you has come from those thoughts. So when you're not happy about something, you're questioning, am I happy? No, that is who you are. Then the second question kicks in, whom do I choose to be? Now you're using the conscious part of you to make the decision going forward. Muraya, please mute. Mr. Muraya, thank you. So going forward, what you're doing basically is you're making a personal decision. You're using a conscious part of you to make the decision going forward. This is who I choose to be. And the way you choose to be is to change your thoughts. If you don't change your thoughts, nothing is going to change in your life. Even if you pray for how long, prayers, God answers them to you in those ways that I showed you. In this one, I talked about feelings, thoughts, and then experience. So every time you're praying about something, pay attention to the experiences you go through, because out of those experiences, God is bringing them to answer you. Basically, ni kama kugonga, ubadilishe mawazo yako. You take time to think, because the problem is not him, the problem is you and I. So as long as you're holding thoughts of poverty, it doesn't matter how many times you're going to go to the church, to the mosque and anything and pray. So long as you're holding thoughts of poverty, that's what's going to show up in your life. Why? Because God gave us the free will. The free will means he cannot interfere with the thoughts we allow inside there. And through those thoughts, we create our reality. So the experiences we go through, please start paying attention to them. There's always a lesson behind every experience, especially the painful ones. The problem with us is we've been brought up to complain about those painful experiences. When you complain, how do you expect to learn anything from it? So learn to bless every experience that comes to you, especially the painful ones. It's okay to feel pain. It's okay to be sad. I'm not saying you don't do that. If you want to cry, go ahead and cry. But at the end of it, ask God this question. I know for a fact that you have brought this experience to me to learn something based on my prayers of what I want. So what I'm humbly requesting of you is, please show me what it is I'm supposed to learn from this. The moment you start doing that, you will always start to see answers. And the moment you embrace those answers, your life will start taking off in the direction of which you are praying to. Try this for a month and get back to me and tell me whether it's not working. So that's the reality I've come to discover. And these are the things I'm telling you. I'm teaching people who are not even, I've never even stepped foot in school, and their life is starting to transform. I believe in the next 1 to 2 years' time, this name Andrew will be very big in this country because of what I'm starting to see happening in people's life. So please take these things and run with them. Now, after understanding that, second thing that I wanted to emphasize as a creator, you need to understand that the secret towards financial freedom of wealth is understanding what we call the 3 cash flowing programs. So money flows like wind, like a river. And the way it flows, it is in 3 ways. And I went through each one of them. And I told you from these 3, only one of them guarantees you financial freedom and wealth. And that is to focus your mind on cash flowing assets. Stop focusing your mind on savings. Because when you focus your mind on savings, you will be enriching someone else and not you. That's why you see the heart of financial literacy is centered around savings. Leo mtaiona vizuri kabisa because I'm going to walk you through how that came to be. So since that's what has been taught over and over for years in financial literacy, we tend to accept that that is the truth. So we try our level best to save. And this is the question you need to ask yourself. How many millionaires do you know of that got there through savings? Think about that statement. How many millionaires or billionaires do you know who got there through savings? And you'll realize there's none. All of them focus on cash flowing assets or investments, because investments is somehow you're putting money with the expectation that it will make returns for you constantly. All of them talk about investments, cash flowing assets. So when you're not aware of this, you'll keep saving. I have seen people who save for 3 years and they're so excited. Then it just takes one day where they withdraw that money to go for a holiday in Dubai. And when they come back, they're back to scratch. So 3 years have gone, your bank is zero. Hauna tofauti na ule wana save. What are you doing? And you feel happy about it. Why? Because your subconscious has been programmed. Saving is the engine or the vehicle that is going to take you to financial freedom. That is not true. And that's why I told you that product we're going to come up with. I really urge you to take advantage of that because we're going to work as a group. So that ukisikia umelemewa kuna watu wanakushikilia, tunavutana, tunatu pamoja. Focus yetu kabisa as creators should be cash flowing assets, nothing else. Focus, cash flowing asset, nothing else. When you focus on cash flowing assets, savings become automatic. It just fits itself. Bila hata kusukumwa na mtu, you're not even going to feel the pinch of saving. You live and look forward to saving. You want to increase your savings because there's something you're looking forward to, which you know very well is gonna bring back your returns. So let's move away from this thought of saving to cash flowing assets. All right. Now, the other thing we went through last time was when I was talking about savings, I told you in the financial literacy world, they teach you save what is left. That's a statement they always tell you. Save what is left. And so I asked you, when they tell you to save what is left, what are they asking you to do first? Before saving, before anything is left, what are they encouraging you to do indirectly? They're encouraging you to spend. And I told you from the word go, since you're a child, when our forefathers were lied to, that it is wrong to teach children about money, they knew exactly what they were doing. They understood that our forefathers would be working with us in shops, supermarkets. They'll be seeing us as children. They knew very well we'll be seeing our environment, people purchasing things. And that's why the psychology of the mind comes into, because through those observations, you start creating a belief system about money in your subconscious mind. So I told you every observation is a layer, a second one, a third one, a fourth one. It goes up like a wall. And that forms up into your subconscious mind. That is why we Africans are consumers. We're always just thinking of spending. We're not even producing anything. We have farmers from Central and Rift Valley doing tea. We grow tea, then we export it for them to do something, produce something about it. Then they return it back to us. What is it that they do there that we can't do here? Why can't we grow the tea and do whatever it is they do so that we produce the whole package, then we export the whole thing? What is it about Ghana that they grow cocoa and it has to be exported to somewhere else for them to create chocolates? Why can't we do that ourselves? It's because we have been conditioned, we've been brainwashed completely to be consumers. We have even lost faith in ourselves. We don't even believe in ourselves. That's why we want to look like them. You want to have their names. All those things are all here. And so in the context of money, they also design the curriculum around financial literacy. And so when they teach you, because they tell you they're going to teach you about money, you believe they care about you. No, they don't. Saving is not going to take you anywhere. So when they tell you, spend what is left, they're asking you to spend, continue spending. So when you tell someone, spend what is left, kama ijabaki atasema iko sawa, hakuna kitu imebaki, niliambia ile imebaki ndo nafani yake, so hakuna ile imebaki. And a lot of us go through that for years. Tunakuta siku moja mtu anajiuliza, hey, nimefanya kazi 7 years and I have nothing to show. That is why our forefathers end up the way they are. The retirees end up the way they are. And if we do not change our ways, then I guarantee you pia sisi ni huko tunaelekea. So I told you last time, when they say, save what is left, that is very wrong. You are supposed to spend what is left. So what I'm asking you to do first, I'm asking you to save before spending. And last time I gave you a very good example. If I give you 10,000 right now, and I'm repeating that, if I give you 10,000 right now, what will you do with it? What is the first thing that will come to your mind? And all the answers that were displayed on the screen, others were saying, nitalipa deni. Others were saying, watanunua sijui nini. It was just consumption. The fact that that's the first thing that comes to your mind, it tells you how programmed you are. So the goal of this program is to reverse that, such that if I give you 10,000, the first thing that should come to your mind is saving towards a cash flowing asset. In fact, it should be cash flow asset. What cash flow asset? So if you're thinking of a cash flow asset of, let's say, 100,000, and Andrew has given you 10,000, then you know I have 90 to go. That is the secret. And this is not something you're going to be taught anywhere. And to think you don't need to go to school. Forget the thinking they tell us about going to school. That is another program that goes on. I know so many people who never gone to school, but they think. So it's about getting the right knowledge. And that's why I talked about the difference between the incorrect knowledge and the right knowledge. So what I'm giving you is the right knowledge into opening doors of financial freedom to you. So in that context, I'm saying, do not save what is left after spending. Spend what is left after saving. And that saving should not just be saving. It has to be tied to a cash flowing asset ahead of you. All right? So after that, then we asked ourselves, when we're thinking about these cash flow assets that we want to go for, what are the different methods of where we can get the capital to start? So we said there are only two ways. Number one, you save towards that cash flowing asset, which is just what we've been talking about. or second, you borrow money to actually implement that cash flowing asset. So those are the two only ways you can get the capital to put towards those cash flowing assets. So we've talked about savings, and you'll allow me just to draw a small something I want to share with you here. If you remember well, we drew the cash flow quadrant here. So you have your E, S, B, I, and this is what they're telling us. So they tell us to save what is left here. So what they're asking us to do first is spend. So that you really get to see this thing on a practical way. It means any money coming from here, they're encouraging you to spend first. Psychologically, when you think about it, that's what they're driving your subconscious to do first. Here we're saying, on the other hand, is this is not the right way to go about it. So what needs to happen is, if you get income from here, the first thing you're supposed to do is save. And that saving should be tied in a cash flowing asset. Then whatever is left is now what you spend. This is the difference between what they teach you out there and what I'm teaching you. This is a very dangerous path to go by. This is what I want you to implement. Okay? So if you really think about this, you'll realize that it has great advantages. Because when you focus on this, you're not going to be shy of even staying in a bed sitter. You'll be comfortable. Even if people laugh at you, you'll be comfortable because you know exactly what you're targeting. However, if you follow this top part and you find yourself living in a bed sitter, mtu atakuja kuambiaje unatengeneza pesa mingi hivi na unaishi kwa bed sitter, you'll start feeling like I'm not worth to be there. Why? Because you don't have something very specific you're eyeing. The money is still with you even before you think of saving. The first thing you're thinking about is spending. So automatically utajiambia hapana, I can afford a 2-bedroom. Na utaingia 2-bedroom. So at the end of the day, hauna kitu yoyote. Unasema okay anyway, hakuna kitu imebaki, so I can't save. So you continue living this lifestyle of 2-bedroom mpaka siku ile kazi itaisha. Na kazi kiisha, acha hiyo bed sitter ulikuwa unadharau, unajipata umerudi kwa wazazi wako with nothing. So when you focus on this, you will not care what people tell you because it's so clear what you're going for. And that is why I can't wait for us to start walking this journey, all of us together towards that product. And you're going to see the wonders that it brings, all right? And so once we get this cash flowing asset, it will start bringing more money here. So we want to create channels. It's like rivers, huh? Different channels bringing money from different directions to our port. That's where we're going with this. But we do not want to start big because we still have to change this one before we can start scaling this product. Okay? Now, when it comes to credit, we've talked enough about savings now. That should be sufficient. Today I want to focus on credit. And basically here, I'm talking about borrowing. Now, I want to show you something interesting. I want to give you the basics that are going to help you deeply understand what borrowing is all about, okay? So let's look at the history of money. Now, in the history of money, I remember these things used to be taught when we were in primary school, but they never used to make sense then until later on. So today I just want to take you through it, and you're going to understand why that is so powerful for you to learn. Now, long time, we used to have something called barter trade. This is how money started. So wewe uko na mayai, na mimi niko na maziwa. Uko na kuku, mimi niko na ng'ombe. So nataka mayai, wewe unataka maziwa. We exchange. So that exchange is what they used to call barter trade. That's how long time people used to, it was the form of money, okay? Now this became a bit complicated. You can imagine nimekupatia machungwa, wewe umenipatia maziwa, maziwa baada ya siku moja imeharibika, machungwa zitakaa. So such factors started making this thing become very complicated. So they decided, why don't we come up with something that we can use that is very valuable, which all of us can agree to use as a source of trade. And so they ended up having the precious metals and mainly settled in gold. So gold became the mean of exchange. So with gold, I could buy eggs, I could buy milk, I could buy chickens, cows, whatever it is. So I'll take the cow and give gold. Get? Now, you can imagine now carrying, if you're selling something so big, it means you have to carry loads of gold, which ambao ni mzito. So with time, it evolved where they decided, let's chip off some of this gold and create small pieces which we can start counting. So these gold pieces was the genesis of what we call today coins. This is where they originated from. Okay? Now, something interesting happened as this was going on. Some guys realized we have now people on one side, let's call them X. Let's say these are the buyers. And on this side, we have the sellers who are Y. So they realized if we can come between them here, we can make work easy for both ends. Because you can imagine the kind of discussion that used to go between them. Are these coins enough? No, 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 no. To and fro before a deal is closed. So some people took advantage and decided to stand in between here. So they'll actually settle this gold in exchange of these two. And eventually, they decided that these two can be agreed by writing a piece of paper that got the name called IOU. So huyu jamaa kwa hapa hivi katikati, this was the genesis of the people today we call brokers. He's broken between X and Y, buyer and seller. So basically, he took over the responsibility of this part. So he started creating this paper where you could sign between the two of you, X and Y, and you will agree. And things started flowing so well at that particular point that they got so excited, they started now adding things to this IOU paper. So it was just like a paper, just like an agreement between me and you. And ladies and gentlemen, it was the genesis of the paper money as you know it today. So from here it went to what we call paper money. However, for this to be accepted as a form of exchange, which is money, it had to be tied back to gold. I hope you're with me up to this point. Because remember tumetoka na gold hapa, ndio hizi hapa, zikakuja hapa katikati. So these guys introduced a piece of paper here. And for it to be accepted, they said that this paper must have value connected to the gold. All right. So from there, we moved on to what we call plastic. Plastic cards. So these are your Visas and MasterCards and so forth. And then after here, we went to what we call electronic money. So these are the evolution of money, electronic money. So tuko na 1, 2, 3. Here we have 4, 5, 6. And then there's a recent one that now came up. The 7th one is what you call the crypto currency. And you're going to look at this one just a bit. Let me put an idea of what exactly is going on. Okay. So stay with me on this diagram. So that's the evolution of how money has transformed from way back to where we are today. Now, I want you to pay attention to this part. I'm going to wrap the entire thing, but now I'm going to focus on this part from here. Okay? Haya, wacha nivute huku juu. So this is 6. And then here I'm going to use crypto. Let me just write it as that. Crypto. So once we go to this part here, upper number 4, where we have accepted paper money, something interesting happened. So you have the gold, which then determines the paper money here. So I want you to imagine the United States dollar, wametengeneza karatasi yao, or their money, the way you know it as the dollar. Kenya imetengeneza yetu Kenya shilling. You have the British who have the British pound, okay? You have the South African who have the South African rand, okay? And so forth and so forth. I want you to imagine all this money being tied to the gold and you're trying to exchange. So where do you set the standard? If you have 4 countries where you're trading with them, what do you use? Do you use the currency or do you use the gold? And I'm sure you can agree with me, it brought complications. It really complicated things such that they sat down and decided, why don't we pick one currency and that currency should be fixed to gold, and then the rest of the other currencies should be fixed to that one currency. Okay? And at that particular time, they ended up agreeing on the US dollar. So the US dollar was fixed by the gold, and then the rest of us now, Kenya shillings tuko hapa, the British pound wako hapo, South African rand wako hapo hivyo, na hizo zingine zote. That is why to this day, when you're trading something outside the country, you use dollars. So dollar was accepted as the currency of trade worldwide, but it was attached to gold. So for example, if Kenya needed more dollars so that it could buy things, let's say in South Africa, we Kenyans had to produce gold and ship it over to the United States. And in exchange, they'll give us US dollars. Then we'll use that US dollar to trade with any country that we wanted. So there's a record that was being kept. So countries around knew Kenya imepeana gold ngapi, France imepeana ngapi, Cambodia imepeana ngapi, like that. That record. So it was a way of trying to create transparency. Then in 1941, something interesting happened. There is this Vietnam War that was going on in the US. And you know, war is very costly. So the US got to a point whereby they ran out of their own dollars. But because they're the ones who are printing the dollars, they started printing dollars, yet they did not avail the gold for the dollars they were printing. And because the entire countries across the world had a view or an idea of how much gold the US had, when the war was going on, questions started arising. Hii vita imeendelea sana, US inatoa wapi pesa? According to estimates, by this time, they're not supposed to be having any money. So the only logical explanation as to why they're able to fund this war to go on is that they're printing more dollars and they're not producing the gold required. So France was the first country to tell them, we are walking out of this partnership, we want our gold back. And once France said that, Germany followed. So the US realized quickly that within no time, all countries are going to withdraw the gold. So the then president of the United States, he was called Nixon, he just came up and announced that from that day going forward, that they are going to suspend the attachment of the US dollar to the gold. They quickly passed a law and money stopped being pegged in anything measurable or valuable. So money just became a piece of paper like this one. And to this day, that is how it is. So you can imagine how many people were angered by that. And I'm going to tell you the truth. That is why the US went after Gaddafi and eliminated him. Gaddafi was not a terrorist, what they're trying to tell us. Gaddafi had been accumulating gold, very much of them, and he had this concept of creating an African currency that was going to be pegged to the gold here, and then that currency will now be pegged to all other African nations, which meant that was a threat to the US dollar. So if you sit down and imagine, if we imagine that 75% of the natural resources are coming from Africa, and they have brainwashed us to not think, to be able to do, to know what to do with it, we have to export it all the time, you can imagine how much money US makes from Africa through those resources only. So Gaddafi is saying that he's going to create a currency that is going to be pegged to gold, and then the rest of African countries are going to peg it to this one, meant that trade of importing or exporting things to the West ingeisha. Kama ingeisha, ingebidi the Western to be using this currency which Gaddafi wanted. And that will have been the end of the dollar. That one I assure you. So what did they do quickly? Wakaorganize terrorism before wakaingia ndani nini wakamtafuta wakamuua. They told us that they wanted to free their people. Are Libyans today free than they were back then? Long time in Libya, hospitals were free, the roads were good, infrastructure was very good. Everything that Gaddafi had started building that was going to come and benefit Africa, they bombed all those things. And so that is what it is to this day. So mkisikia maneno ya BRICS, when you see someone like Putin doing whatever he's doing, it is the anger of this history of money and what the US has done to the world. So now why am I telling you this? Because I want you to pick something from here. From 6, we go to 7. Now this part, the government is in control through what we call in Kenya, Central Bank of Kenya. They control the money supply and demand. Plastic cards are also in control with them here. Electronic money, M-Pesa, CBK is in control. So there are people who are not happy at all. And they just didn't accept that the government should be in control of such things, money, at all, at all, at all. So someone, somewhere, or some people somewhere, decided to create something that could be used in exchange of money that the government had no control of. That was the birth of cryptocurrency, and specifically Bitcoin. That is where it came from. That was the genesis of it. And that's why you find a lot of governments are trying to fight it. So the unfortunate thing is that the way it got out, it was used in a lot of these bad things, drug dealing and trafficking and things like those ones. But the concept or the logic behind it was to come up with something that we can use as money, an exchange form that the government has no control over. That is why when you study about it, you hear it's Internet of Things. It's very difficult for the government to actually control this thing. Okay? So I am giving you this history because now I want to introduce the concept of borrowing. All right. Now, where is this coming from? So if you are to go to the slide, so that's what this slide is all about, the evolution of money. So we started with barter trade here. We went to gold. Then we broke them down into coins, smaller pieces. We started calling them metal coins, which became now the coins as you know them today. We went to paper money. We moved to plastic, electronic, and then the cryptocurrencies. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. One or two people, just write on the comment, please. Do you think cryptocurrency is the end of the evolution of money, or something else is going to show up at some point in the future? Quick one. I'd like to hear what your thoughts on that. Anyone? Tutakwama kwa cryptocurrencies or something else is going to come up? So for those who follow such things, those who understand this concept made a lot of money, because they realized cryptocurrencies is going to shake up this world. And so they bought them at a very, very minimal when they were just starting. And today they've made quite good number of returns. Okay. So let's go back now to banking. Now I want to bring the concept of borrowing. So if you look at this history that I've shared with you, I want to point out something. Just like I mentioned, we have those people we call brokers today. This IOU was the genesis of what you know today as banks. Okay? So here we had X, and here we had Y. In the context of the bank, these guys on the left side are called savers. And these guys on this right-hand side are called borrowers. So this is how this thing evolved to become now a bank. They realized we can bring all these people together, and by virtue of connecting the two of them and getting a small cut from them, if there are many of them, we can make a lot of money. Now, before money was detached from gold, it meant then, if you had one borrower who wanted $1 billion, and you did not have that money as a bank, what did you have to do? It meant you had to actually go and look for savers. You had to encourage your savers to save and save and save and save. But behind the curtains, what you're trying to do is you're trying to raise that $1 billion for that one borrower. And so this became very stressful for banks. Very, very stressful. They were really struggling to get savers to increase their savings, if not to get new members to open more accounts. Why? Because they're trying to satisfy the other side of their arm, which is borrowers. So in a nutshell, we say the bank is actually a broker. It's a broker between these two groups of people, savers and borrowers. So what they will do, as they keep trying to push, they really try and understand, what can we do such that these savers can just be bringing money even without being told. And a very bright idea came into them. We have always used psychology. We have always played with these people's mind to do what we want them to do, even without them realizing that we're doing this. So what did they do? They created a curriculum called financial literacy to educate you about money. And on a face value, it sounds very good. Oh, the bank is thinking about us. But what you cannot see when you don't have an open mind is, at the center of all that teaching, they kept pushing this one. Save, 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 save. Save for your future. That's why today, meet any banker and ask them, by the way, why do you ask people to save? Usikie zile jibu utapewa. You'll hear them telling you, for your financial freedom, for your future. For my future what? And when you press them for future what, utaona watakwama. Because they're also just taking what has been taught all over. They just been passed on the generation. No one is taking time to really think, critically think about what they're saying. So when you press someone to the ukuta kabisa mwambie, why am I saving? For what? Hey, utaki kusave utaumia huko mbele. Ni wangapi wamesave na wanaumia? You're telling us it's financial freedom. How many savers? I asked you a very simple question. How many millionaires do you know of who got there through savings? And you realize hakuna. They get there through cash flowing assets. So why are the financial literacy? Why is the heart of financial literacy forcing people, pushing people to save? Why? It's because they wanted to condition your subconscious mind just to be taking money there. That's why I told you someone can save for 3 years and it only take 1 week to blow that money away. Amelearn nini kuhusu financial freedom? Nothing. So to them, the care was bringing money. We don't have to follow you. Mtazileta tu wenyewe.
Ulikuwa na incident ilikuwa ya wajire lwa.
Simon, please mute.
No.
Simon, thank you. So the whole concept was, let them just bring the money. Let them bring the money. Then we can focus on the people who are good in borrowing. So the question I want you to ask yourself today is this. Do you want your money to stay somewhere safe? Or do you want your money to work for you? Do you want your money to stay somewhere safe? Or do you want your money to work for you? If you want your money to stay safe, peleka pesa yako kwa bank. Na sijasema sako, nimesema bank. If you want your money to work for you, toa pesa yako kwa bank. Because I want to introduce a term we call inflation. Without getting into the details, for those of you who do not know what this word means, it is basically the changing of prices of commodities over time. Nikiwa mtoto ningeza kununua peremende ya ndururu. Leo hata siwezi ona ndururu na macho. Ile sweet nilikuwa nanunua ndururu leo nanunua shilingi 5. The sweet is still the same. Haijabadilika hiyo Big G. Ni ile tu. Lakini imetoka ndururu sasa nainunua shilingi 5. That increase of price is what we're calling inflation. Mkate leo unanunua 20, kesho ukiamka ni 25. After 1 week 30. Hivyo. When you see things going up that way, that's what we call inflation. And this word here, you will never hear it mentioned in any place in financial literacy. Hakuna malota kutajia kitu. And let me tell you why. Anytime you put on an investment, any given time you're putting on your money in any investments, if you want to know your true returns, what you do is you take the return you are told, and then you subtract what you're calling inflation. That's when you get your true return. So kwa mfano, uende kwa bank wakwambie, ukisave na sisi in a fixed deposit, we are going to give you, let's say, they tell you are going to give you 6%. It might sound good to you, but they'll never mention this part here. That's why it's never in financial literacy. You are supposed to subtract this thing here. That's when you know exactly whether the money is working for you or it's working for someone else. The current inflation right now in Kenya, I believe it's about 6.65, somewhere there. So if you take 6 that they promised you and you subtract this inflation, it means you end up with minus 0.65. So your money is losing value. Therefore, for that money to be able to work for you, you need to hear a figure higher than this. But because most of the time that figure is not going to be higher than this, that's why they will never tell you this. They'll never teach you this. So they'll just focus with this return, but they'll never tell you this. Na siku utagundua uende kuuliza, watakwambia, ala, huko unajua? They make it sound like it's something normal. People are supposed to learn. From where? And that is why I tell people, put in money in the banks, you are losing. I see people in circles, mnaleta ile minimum yenyu ya monthly, the rest of the money mnapeleka bank. You are not an owner of that bank. You are an owner of your circle. Unaleta ile kidogo kwa sako yako, hiyo ingine unakimbiza kwa bank. So you make them rich and rich and rich. This year, I don't know if they start looking at how the profits they're announcing. Stanbic last year has increased by 36.8% profits. Yet last year, the economy was so bad, they are making so much money. Look at those returns in 1 year. When the economy is being so bad, they're able to do 38.6%. It's because of your people. You're bringing the minimum to your own circle, alafu ile mingi mnakimbiza huko. You're making them rich. They are paying their own people there. Alafu nakuja kupiga kelele kwa sako yako mbona hakuna dividends. Right now, the banks, na kama huamini, endo utafute information kwa Central Bank Kenya website. The banks are actually paying people 3.35% in a savings account. And the inflation is at 6.65. So you're losing over minus 3 of your money. And that's why I told you, if you want your money to be safe, if your interest is just safety, peleka kwa bank. But if you want money to work for you, itoe huko haraka sana. Because it being there, it's working for other people, not you. This is something they don't teach you. That's why Sacco is such a good vehicle. It's just that people are not empowered well enough to realize the power of it. And that's why we've gone with baby steps. Pole pole tukikuja tu ndo muweze kufunguka macho muone Kenya mko mnaona mbeleni. All right? All right. Now, to summarize about this bank, we are saying that banks are brokers, all right, between savers and borrowers. Here tumeangalia. When savings and investing, one must consider the inflation. You must subtract inflation in the investment that you want to do. If it's positive, then money will be working for you. If it's negative, you will be losing your money. Okay? So now we've talked enough about savings. Now I want to get to the second part, which we're calling borrowing. Now let's go back to what we said in terms of the subconscious mind. We said as children, when you're not aware of what is being instilled in you, you actually become a victim. So when you look at a bank, excuse me, nashikwa na homa, please excuse me for that. So let's assume now we have the savers here, chat ones hapa. And then we have the bank. In fact, before we do that, let me make this a bit interesting. Let's assume you're a bank manager. So, and then you have these 4 people who come to you, a person called A, B, C, and D. And all of them are requesting you for a loan of 100,000 to be paid within 1 year. You have no information about them. You know nothing about them. So you're seated in your chair, the way I'm sitting here, and 4 people, one by one, walk in. And all of them want a loan, or they want to borrow 100,000 from you. So ukae chini fikiria sasa nitafanya nini? So I want you to imagine what are the kind of steps you take to try and understand utapatia nani na utanyima nani. What would you look for? You totally have nothing about them. Absolutely nothing. And all of them want this 100,000. So let's assume you say, okay, kwa sababu sina information yote kuhusu, wacha nipatie kila mtu 100,000. I hope wataweza kulipa vile wamesema. We're just assuming this is the starting point, okay? So if we assume they borrowed in January, they're supposed to return this money in December. So the first one, arudishe pesa hapa November. All of it to the interest. Wa pili, arudishe December, the day you had agreed. Watatu, apitishe arudishe tuseme September next year. Alafu wa mwisho, msumbuane na mara mwisho asirudishe. Sawa? So tunaanza pale mwanzo. The first time when they walked into your office, you knew nothing about them completely. So you took a risk and said, well, let me just give them and I see what's going to happen. So after 1 year, you have information about each one of these 4. Person called A alirudisha pesa yake November, before even the month that you agreed here. B akarudisha on the date that you agreed. C ikifika December hajamaliza, but you can see some payments coming in and kama na struggle. And then D, you can actually start telling mali mnaelekea naye. So let's assume this scenario happens. And then after 5 years, the same people walking back in your office, wanting the same amount of money, 100,000. A, B, C, after 5 years to D, wakuje kwa ofisi yako, now they want a loan of 100,000. My question to you is, utapatia nani na utachia nani? Kwa comments, let me see please. You're a credit manager. First time uko na information, you took the risk, you gave them. You've come back, they've come back after 5 years, and now you know very well, A alirudisha November, B akarudisha December. So these 2 returned within the time agreed. C akachelewa sana, with almost 2 years, but eventually alimaliza, na D hakuwajamaliza. Sasa wamerudi kwa ofisi yako, utapatia D? Let me see. I'm trying to think. I'd like to hear the comments. I give A and B and leave out D. Thank you, Roba. Aha. Marianne A, good. A, B, and C, but C, I reduced the amount. Aha. Excellent. A, B, and C. All right, that's sufficient. Thank you so much for that. Now, in terms of risk management, from a credit point of view, we say, huyu ako sawa na huyu ako sawa. But huyu hayuko sawa kwa sababu when we were giving that loan, our expectation was this was supposed to be paid here. It means we'll be incurring costs here. Kumpigia simu, kumtafuta, kufuatilia imefika ngapi. Remember, money is decreasing in value with time. So normally you will go for this A and B. But here comes the most interesting question. Let's assume now A and B, watu wamekuja na wanataka 1 million each, and you only have 1 million. A and B wamekuja na wanataka 1 million each, and you only have 1 million. Utapatia A ama utapatia B? This should be interesting. A and B wamekuja. Let me see. A, Purity, thank you. Anyone else? B, more interest. Anyone else? B. A. Okay, good. So here's the trick. If you get that money here, okay, ikiingia hapa, because A has shown a habit of paying earlier than when you're expecting, it means you can take that amount and loan it to someone else up November and December, 2 months. Are you not going to make more money than B who pays on time? I believe all of you are going to see where my point is. Okay? Right? So if you had a choice, you'll actually go for A, because the earlier they return the money for you than when you're expecting, then you can do something with that money to even make more money. So for example, let's assume you gave A 1 million. If you had 2 million and you gave each one of them 1 million, 1 million. A atarudisha yake hapa na watarudisha yake hapa. But you can take here A na ucheze nayo within these 2 months and make some more money, which means by this time utakuwa na more money than this person. So where am I going with this? Where I am going with this is very, very simple. Every time you take a loan from somewhere, most people do not know that currently, where the world we're living today, it is recorded somewhere. It doesn't matter whether it's a loan from the apps, these fintech apps, or a Sacco, or a microfinance, or a bank. Any form of credit that you take to this day, it is recorded somewhere. And the somewhere where it's recorded, it is shared with all credit providers. And the information that they share inside there is going to reflect whether you have a habit or a character of either A, B, C, or D. So anytime you borrow money, understand that the moment umechukua hiyo pesa hivi, whoever gave it to you, whether it's a Sacco, a bank, or a fintech, they start monitoring your payment habits. And the payment habits are broken down into these 4, A, B, C, D. Now, because this knowledge is not out there for so many people to understand, it comes to haunt them later on in life. So this place where they pick this information, slowly and slowly, ukilipa inabaki pale pale. Ukichukua kwingine, ulipelipe inakuja inakuwa upgraded. Every time you borrow, your information is stored somewhere. And that place where it's stored, it's like a circle like this. So you have all these institutions plugged into it. So you can have Bank 1, you can have Sacco 1, you can have bank 2, you can have microfinance 1, you can have fintech 1, you can have Sacco 2. So all these ones are plugged. And let me tell you the direction it's heading. Siku hizi tunaweza kopa stima. Even that is coming inside here. In the near future, any credit that you take, itakuwa inaingia hapa. So this part where all this information is being picked up and stored, this is what you people know as CRB. So it is upon you to decide what kind of character do you want displayed inside there. So if you borrow money here from, let's say, Bank 1, and then you display a character of default, you get blacklisted here. Sasa ukijaribu kujoin sacco fulani hapo uitishe loan, before they give you that loan, the first thing they do is they normally come inside the CRB portal and they check about your history. Kama ulikuwa umedefault hapa, nyinyi wote mmenijibu mkaniambia hamwezi patia D. That is exactly how they're going to respond to you. So I know of so many people who took, especially what they call the HELB, wakijoin universities, alafu wakatumia hizo pesa vile walitumia na wakalenga kabisa wakachana nazo, thinking that hiyo maneno iliisha. So they start getting employed as junior officers, they go up the ranks. When you reach now, there's a level where you reach, you have to produce something called a clearance certificate from CRB. There are certain positions these days, na kwa wale mnaenda kwa politician, trust me, you cannot, if that certificate has a negative impact. You can't be employed. And it's getting even worse. Sasa zamani ilikuwa CEOs. Sasa imeshuka managers wote. For you to be promoted to be a manager, you must produce this certificate. If you're listed negatively in CRB, then they say it's a matter of integrity issues, which I don't agree with. Sometimes circumstances just happen and you find yourself hauna njia ingine. So I think it's a very unfair system, but that is the reality of what is today. Na sasa inazidi kushuka. That's even the junior officers siku hizi wanaambiwa, mtu amemaliza university anaambiwa leta CRB certificate. Sasa the danger here is that our university students, wakitoka manyumbani wakuja Nairobi University, whatever it is, it's a lifestyle for them. They've always been dreaming about this. So anasikia influence kutoka marafiki zake, twende tukaone mpira Manchester sijui nacheza na nini. Wanaingia club, ananunua soda, akiwatch mpira, akiangalia watu wengine wanajivinjari na mataska na manini, hiyo thirst inaweza kumuingia. But hana pesa, na hizi piga nyumbani atisha pesa ya kukunywa. Kidogo kidogo anaambiwa, siingie kwa siingie, kuna maapp, kuna mshwari, kuna nini. Anajaribu kidogo, anapata 1000. Ala, it's this simple, mpaka anaitishia watu round. Just because we ignored teaching our children the concepts of money, this child does not realize the repercussion in the future. Wakati muda unaenda anaambiwa lipe, anashinda akitumiwa text, anapuza, jina yake inatupwa hapa ndani. I am telling you that thing is going to come and haunt you in the future. So from where I'm seated today, I'm asking you, if you're thinking about financial freedom and whether you're thinking about wealth, you need to come up with a plan. If you're listed at CRB, vile utatolewa hapo. And I'm just about to go explain why this is the case. So, when it comes to borrowing, I hope this is very clear to you. So what I advise my students now, those people that take through these classes, these things start from a very young age. Uko nursery school, unaomba jirani wako kalamu kama hii, alafu rudishe. Because habit is habit. Habit hajui pesa na kalamu. So even your children, you should start teaching them to learn to return things. Umomba kitabu unataka kusoma. Uliambia utanirudishia Friday, unanirudishia next week. You're starting to home character of C. If you return it on the day I told you, you're forming a habit of B. And that's how it happens. Usione mtu alipi pesa tu hivyo hivyo ati juu hataki. There's a reason, there's a build up in the subconscious mind ambayo hajui iko hapo. And that's why we're struggling even as a country to pay our debt, because it has become our norm. Tunaomba tu tunakula pesa, tunaiba, corruption, we try tunaomba zingine. It's become in the subconscious of this country. Now we're getting punished because of that, with all these taxes na hizi vitu zote. So this again points out as to why kids need to start learning this thing from a very, very young age. Because when you build a character of A, my friend, you do not have an idea of how powerful this is. I want you to imagine yourself working in one of these institutions, whether it's a sacco, it's a bank, a microfinance, whatever it is. Alafu umekwa uwe watu wa sales. Nyinyi ndio mnaenda kutafuta the best borrowers you can get outside there. So as your main KPI, kazi yako ni kwenda kutafuta good borrowers who want money. Will you go look for A, B, C, or D? You'll naturally look for A. Okay? But where do you get them? You just don't walk on the street and look and ask them, well, unalipaga mapema pana. That's why this system called CRB was created. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to walk inside there because you have access. And you have access to everyone in all other banks and all these other circles and financial institutions. And you'll be looking specifically for those guys who have this character we are deeming A. Then you call them. You tell them, I'm so-and-so from a certain circle. We've just done some analysis about you and we think you can qualify to, let's say, 5 million. Would you be interested in taking this loan up? For those of you who've been in employment, I'm sure the number of times you've received call from unexpected people from banks wanting you to borrow money from them. How did they get your contacts? All right? So when you learn this, when you keep building this, character A, unachukua, unalipa before. Unachukua, unalipa before. Each return is solidifying your character. And that is why the more you build up your good character, wanaanza kukuongezea ile pesa unaweza borrow. This is the secret that the wealth people understand. And that's why I told you when I was closing my remarks last time, I said, the wealthy people never use their money to make money. They use other people's money to make money. Who are these others? It's the savers. So they go there and borrow, but because they have built a character of A or B at best, they have accumulated over the years that solid character that banks consider them safe. So they're always calling them, do you want a loan? Do you want a loan? Imagine being called by different institutions asking you, do you want a loan? How beautiful would that be? But why don't we get calls ourselves? It's because we are programmed from a very young age to be consumers. Yani pesa ikiingia tu hivi unaanza kuwashwa, mtafanya nini, mtanunua nini? That is how we are wired from the moment we were born. That's why they made sure financial education is not part of our curriculum, because if we learn these things from a young age, then tungeweza kujua. But they knew by the time we get to 18, the damage is already done. And that's why I gave you that example of me. Even for me, when I graduated, I came back, I got this good job. The first loan I took, I bought a car. And by the time I was finishing paying for that car, I didn't have the car itself. because no one empowered me to realize that. So I was just following what had been seen around me. So we need to change this. And that's why I said, if you want money to work for you, remember we said there are two ways of how you can raise capital towards cash flowing assets. The first one we said is through savings. But savings is going to take you time because you have to build assets, you have to build a business. If you're employed, then you have to save for a very long time to raise. But there's another one called borrowing or credit. And that one can lead you to easy money. Yani pesa iko tu. You just need to pick it. But what's going to determine whether you're going to pick it or not is the one of these four habits. So we need to start reversing where we are. If you're in C&D, we need now to start working towards here. And as a creator, as I told you, those two questions. Am I happy with what I'm seeing today? If not, what is the choice I'm making going forward? So that choice is changing. I do not want to be in D. I do not want to be in C. I want to be in A or B. Okay? So with this one, now let's bring in this concept of borrowing properly here. Having taken you through that CRB, so from the talk I've just given you, if we have save here, you have the bank. And remember, when I talk about bank, I don't mean circles, okay? And then we have borrowers. I'm going to show you why that is the reason at the end of this presentation. So borrowers, we have two types. So there are people we call good borrowers, and there are those we call bad borrowers. Simply put, good borrowers is A and B. And bad borrowers is C and D. So I want you to imagine what we discussed in those initial classes. When you're raised up in an environment where everyone is spending, that is the only program that has accumulated in your subconscious mind. So anytime you receive money, it's about spending. It's about consuming. So whether it's income coming from there, cash flow, the cash flow quadrant, you're just doing to spend. That is why even when you borrow money, a lot of people don't even have that self-discipline. Ameomba akafanye mradi fulani, lakini pesa ikiingia ina divert inaenda kwa kitu ingine. That is the power of your subconscious mind. That's how powerful it has been consumed. It has been programmed. Wewe tumia ijalishi, wewe tumia tu. So institutions are always looking for these people here, the good borrowers. These are the people wanakujanga kwa hawa wanakuja hapa wanatafuta pesa hapa, na hawa wanakuja wanaorganize na hawa. So when you borrow here, as a borrower here, so hawa wanatoa hapa hivi because hawa hawatakikani. So the bank pushes you to save and they tell you will give you 3.55%. Lakini kwa borrower anaambiwa atarudisha 12.6%. So hii 12.6 ikikuja, this guy takes the difference of almost 9 point something. This is the money he makes. Alafu anakutupia hapa. Just because you lack the right knowledge. So the wealthy people understand that using my own money is a waste of time. There's a phone call I can make in a bank and I'm going to get that loan. There's a phone call I can make in my circle na itatoka tu saizi. But when they get that money, where do they take it? Do they save it? No. They borrow money and place it in what we call cash flowing assets, because they know that cash flowing asset is going to return money and I'll be able to pay back this loan. And eventually that cash flowing asset, I'm going to own it forever. So we go back to the concept of the 3 cash flowing assets. And this is how it looked like. So mkikumbuka, what we did is we drew this. So trying to emphasize the concept of the 3 programs which each one of us has, whether we like it or not. But now the point is, going forward, you know it consciously, and realizing that you are the creator, you have within your power to decide going forward which of these 3 you want to be. So this was the first one, this was the second, this was the third. So here we had income, here we had expense, this was asset, liability, income, expense, asset, liability, income, expense, asset, liability. Now, the other time, tulikuwa tunaangalia pesa inatoka huku, and it was coming from the cash flow quadrant. So we're saying either you're an employee, you have a small business, a big business, or investments, okay? So that is your money. We can say that's how you save. Remember we said you can raise money in 2 ways. So this was part of the savings, okay? Now today, we're going to look at it from a borrowing point of view. So here we have, let's say, a Sacco. So we have Telepost Sacco here, Telepost Sacco here, and Telepost Sacco here. So when you borrow money, it comes in as income. Again, it can only follow those 3 ways. Utachukua hii pesa, uende Dubai trip, money out. The question is, how do you expect this to repay the Sacco here? Okay? Mwingine atachukua loan kama mimi hapa, ingie kama income. Nikuje ninunue personal car hapa. Personal car ianze kutoa mafuta, nikienda kwa mechanic, ni pesa ingine natoa tu kwa mfuko yangu. How do you expect that car to pay back this loan? And the third one which you spoke about is, unachukua hapa, unakuja unanunua cash flowing asset here, and the cash flowing asset starts generating money for you here. So this money that comes from this cash flowing asset, you can now start paying back hivyo. And then eventually ukimaliza kulipa, this asset becomes yours. And that's why I told you, it's not how educated you are. It is not how old or young you are. It is not which part of the country you live. Everything is the mindset. When you have the wrong program, you become a victim for life. And so the whole idea of ensuring that our children do not learn these concepts of money, and to make it worse off, they designed a financial literacy curriculum that hides this truth here by telling you to save, to focus on saving, instead of telling you to focus on cash flowing assets. So the program that we're running with Telecom Sacco, at the end of the day, is to change our mindset, get the right knowledge, and then get something we can start doing together to ensure that we practice. And in the process, we end up shifting our mindset from these 2 to this one. I do not care how much money you're making. As long as you have these 2 programs, in the future, you're going to suffer. 4 years ago, How many? I'm sure all of you know Jeff Koinange. It was on the newspaper. Two of his houses located in an area in Nairobi called Kitusuru, NCBA Bank wanted to auction them. Each house was worth 250 million. Each house. Now, this is what shocked me. Turns out that one house alikuwa ameweka kama store, anaishi kwa hii nyingine. Now, forget about that. I'm made to understand that Jeff Koinange is a relative of Uhuru's family who own NCBA Bank. Imagine your family bank coming after you kwa sababu ulipi deni. What does that tell you? That tells you the program running in his mind ni hapa. So you take loans, then you place them on liabilities. These liabilities are not able to pay back this loan. And that's what I'm telling you, is not about how much money you make. It's about the programs which are running deep inside in your mind. Okay? So what we want to focus is, tunataka tuanze kufocus na cash flowing assets. When you start focusing on cash flowing assets, savings will come automatically. That one I promise you. And so the whole goal is to move hapa tukiwa sisi wote. And the moment you get to this point, that's it. That is it. There's nothing else you need. Everything else will just fall into place. Okay? So in terms of the slides, that's what I was talking about, good borrowing and bad borrowing. You need to distinguish between those two. So a lot of people just think of borrowing as borrowing. The same was talking about knowledge. Knowledge is broken into two. Borrowing is also broken into two. So when you're raised just to consume, and that has become your default state, where even when you borrow money, hata kama ulikuwa umesema unataka kuinvest mahali, hiyo pesa itatoka tu yenyewe. And that's why you find a lot of people when they receive their pensions, if you sit with them and speak to them, the moment they retire, watakwambia pesa hata tujui ilienda wapi. Yet they had plans of what they wanted to do, and most of those plans are investment plans. But if you look deeply, utapata jirani alikuja kaomba, brother kaomba, relatives always know pesa pension inakuja. And before you know it, you're just distributing in those two first parts. You're not putting your money in the cash flowing asset. So let's empower ourselves and let's understand that this is the reality of how things are working outside. So we come back to the same thing I was talking about here. So we're saying being wealthy is not about material things. It's about a program. Being poor is also a program. Being rich is also a program. So let's move away from the poor mindset, away from the rich mindset, and let's focus on the wealthy mindset, which means we need to focus on the assets. All right? All right. So with that, I've also taken you through CRB. We'll look at those four guys: the one who pays before the due date, the one who pays on the exact date, the one who pays after the due date, and the one who defaults. And you're saying the secret here is to actually use other people's money. That's what's called OPM. Use other people's money to make money work for you. Now, if you take a bank today and you take a Sacco and you want to borrow, let's assume you have savings in the bank and you have savings in the Sacco. So you have a bank here, this is a bank, and you have a Sacco here. So here you have saved up, let's say 1 million. And someone else has saved also 1 million with the Sacco. How much do you think you can borrow from the bank without, let's say, collateral? If you want to borrow against your savings, what happens? The bank can never give you more than 800,000. That's the maximum they'll give you. The Sacco will give you 3 times what your savings are. I just want you to look at those figures and tell me whether it makes any sense to you to put money in the bank. Because once you start understanding the focus is cash flowing assets, I just want to generate ideas of cash flowing assets. That is the only thing you need to focus once you understand the difference between good and bad borrowing. Imagine what this guy can do compared to this guy. And as you borrow this money, you make sure you remember those 4, A, B, C, D. So it means then the cash flow asset that you're targeting should be airtight. It's something you've validated, you've researched well, and you know this is going to work out. And by virtue of doing that, circles are the places to be. But because you've been raised to believe the banks are for the esteem, you know, it's like it has a class. And they made us believe Sacco ni watu wadogo. I even see watu wadogo wakijidharau wenyewe, wanaweka the little in the Sacco, then they take the rest with the banks. I have told you, you are not a shareholder of these people, but you are a shareholder of this. That's why you receive dividends. That's why you attend AGMs. That's what they call it for. That's why they're doing these trainings. It's a cooperative. You're cooperating together. So this is where your focus should really be. Be wise and tap into this. Because what this tells is that the money is available. The only thing I need to work on is my character. I move it from C to D, I move it to A and B. That way I know the Sacco is going to give me even more. So from there now, the focus becomes ideas, 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 ideas. All right? So that was the essence of this slide. Then finally, I'd mentioned something last time, and I see even right now, time has also caught up with us. Like I mentioned to you, at the end of this month, we are releasing a mobile app that is going to integrate parents and their children together in a fun way to start learning these concepts of money. You'll realize how powerful this thing for those who are going to get into it. So if you have a child who's in primary or high school, I recommend you go to this link you can see here and start registering. We'll start testing the app this Saturday, and we're planning to release it by the end of this month. And I'm going to give you a simple example of how it works. I told you, we're going to release it with a challenge we call the birthday challenge. So assume the traditional approach has been when your child says he wants a birthday, you save for them, then on the day of the birthday, you buy things, unafanyia birthday yake. He's happy, you're happy. We're saying that's the traditional approach. There's nothing you have taught the child about money. In fact, you've actually emphasized on the subconscious or confirmed that money is for spending because the child asked and you provided. Spending, spending, spending. So in the app, we're telling you this challenge we're releasing it with, because you know the budget you're going to use, you're going to tell your child, download it, go to the challenge, and I want you to write the things you want for your birthday. So the child starts learning how to do a budget. Akiandika cake, unamuuliza keki inatoka pesa ngapi, anakwambia sijui. Next time nenda supermarket, take them to the section of cake, mwambie angalia price uniambie unataka gani. Akichagua 2,000 mwambie mbona ukichagua 1,000. That discussion starts teaching that child something about what we call price comparison. And this is the result of what we call impulse buying. Mtu anatembea tu anaona kiatu anasikia ni kama inamuita anaenda ananunua. So with this, it will kill that automatically. So the child goes through all the things that they want. Then eventually, if that budget aligns to yours, you replicate how the real world works. Sasa unamwambia nitaanza kupatia some chores kwa nyumba. Unaweza nyoshea gari na kulipaga hivi, ukifanya hivi na kulipia hivi. Lakini vitu zingine ukifanya ni responsibility yako, that's not a job. You need to differentiate between the two. And you'll realize the excitement of this child because there's a graph that will be showing as they approach the target. Na kimaliza kabisa, usiende supermarket ununue, enda na yeye ajinunulie. So there's a tip off. box. When that child finishes that birthday, atakuwa anasema, I worked for my birthday. I want you to think about what that will do when we keep doing this from a very young age. We'll start producing producers, not consumers. We'll start raising producers, not consumers. Tuache ku import toothpicks, and we start building our own things, and it starts with this foundation. So if you find that interesting, please just go to this link, register yourself. There's a section called agent number. Just put number 1 on that part. Agent number, that's mine. Just put that, and then we'll get back to you at the time where we're about to release it. Okay? So thank you so much for this day. With the remaining few minutes, I want to hand over to Alice to welcome any questions that you might be having. Asanteni sana. Thank you so much. Over to you, Alice.
Wow, thank you so much, Mr. Andrew, for the far that you brought us. We really learned a lot. Matters of how we should be able to borrow wisely. And I think our members are very much enriched. I just want to encourage that if you have any question, you can write it on our comment or on our chats. And also you can unmute and ask kindly because of time. Anyone with a question can unmute and ask, or a comment.
Yes, I have something to say. My name is Teresa. And
Yes, Marianne.
My name is Teresa, and I want to appreciate Marianne. She has introduced me to this, to listen to the investment today. It was a good topic. I have learned something about saving and the history of money. And thank you so much. I'm thinking about it, and we'll get back to you in the near future. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for your commendation. We really appreciate you. And thank you always for tuning in. Any other, I can see others are also commenting on our chats. Thank you also. We really appreciate it.
Madam Alice, there's a question that has been asked.
Oh yeah, sure. I've just seen it. That
okay,
the investment. Yeah, sure. You can go ahead and try to answer it.
Well, that also depends on your loan. Is it a short-term loan or a long-term loan? And stay tuned. Next class, I'll be taking you through what we call, okay, I don't want to tell you what the topic will be, but it's going to answer your question here. You'll be able to understand it very clearly. But basically what we say that a lot of people when they're doing investments, they do not have a view of where they're investing. For example, let's assume you and I have $1 million and we decide to invest, okay? If I am investing for retirement and you're investing because you're expecting a child in the next 9 months, do you see me and you should think our thought process are so different away? So if I tell you to put your money in the long-term investments, that is not going to work for you. So you need to pick short-term, play around things like money markets or treasury bills because you're looking at 9 months. So the objective of the investments is what decides the kind of investments that you're supposed to partake today. For me, I'm thinking about retirement. I can decide to go to the capital markets and invest in shares and things like those ones. So this is going to come out very clear in the next class next week on Wednesday. Okay? So I hope that at least makes you understand a bit about the question you just asked.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Mr. Andrew. Any other, just unmute and ask or comment.
I'm seeing, hi, that was Teresa, my colleague. Try and reach out to her. Please make me understand. Who reaches to who? Marianne C.
Hi, I
Yes.
was with my colleague here at Lisa, and she's the
Uh-huh.
one who talked about the appreciating. She was just
Oh,
appreciating for
okay. I
that.
get it.
And I also wish to appreciate you, and we have really learned a lot, and especially the part of inflation.
Yeah.
I think, and we also need some tips on the CFAs. I think it's the high time we start learning how to go about them.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
Okay.
I really appreciate. I learn a lot every time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Marianne. I'm sorry for that oversight. I thought you were the one who was speaking. Thank you for always being there for us. Any other? Okay, even as you plan to continue asking your questions, I just wanted to give you an update. Even from the app that Mr. Andrew has shared, we also planning to have a children's training coming up this April. We'll be able to share the details, the registration, we'll be able to share the registration form for you to register your children. So keep tuned in. We'll be able to share to our groups, and you'll be able also to share to your friends and family. So keep tuning in, even as we continue learning. I think from tomorrow, we'll be able to share the link for registration. And our next session also will be next week. So because we missed out last week, so next week also on Wednesday, we'll have the same training going on. So also tune in and invite your friends and family. I hope we've been able. I also want to appreciate our directors who are online. We are seeing you. We really appreciate you. Always tuning in. Yeah. I don't know if we are good. So with those few remarks, I think then we can be able now to conclude. I don't know if Mr. Andrew, you have anything to say before we conclude.
That will be it for me. I have a blessed week ahead. I look forward to seeing you next week on Wednesday, same time. Thank you so much. Stay blessed.
Yeah, thank you so much, our members. We really appreciate for always joining in. Kindly be able to also bring more so that they can be able to learn. We'll be sharing this on our YouTube page. Kindly always tune in whenever you want to learn, and also you can be able to share to others. We want to thank you and we want to appreciate you always. Have a good night. Asingekuja tu hapa tukuonyeshe.